Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on turbotax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Hey, Chicago. What do you say? Cubs gonna win today.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's almost time for a World Series review, but the World Series is technically still going on. So with me to talk about it is National Baseball expert David Brown. Dave, how have you enjoyed the World Series so far?
Usually sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, if only we'd waited a few more hours, it could have been a complete review. Probably. Although the Dodgers have to do a bullpen game, so sometimes you never know what you're going to get with that box of chocolates.
Yeah. It's just, it has a very familiar feeling to me, a Cub fan. I feel like I've been on the Yankee side of this in playoffs where there's nothing worse than not hitting. Everything is just torture.
It makes you look like you don't care.
Yeah, there's no good way to show like effort or enthusiasm when you're just turning around and walking back to the dugout over and over again.
Well, look what happened when they tried to score a run. They threw poor Giancarlo Stanton out the plate.
Yeah. It's not his fault. You can hear Bob Costas.
No, it's not his fault.
It's not his fault. Oh. He's like, it is my fault. I'm the only one who ever gets on base. Who else is going to get thrown out but me?
Touche.
And Juan Soto. Juan has been good. Aaron Judge, however, not so much.
He's going through that thing that Barry Bonds went through for the first few playoff series of his career.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, we know the magic.
We know
fix.
How do we get out of that trick bag?
Is Victor Conte still around? Is he playing the horns again for Tower of Power, or is he back with his own little lab? What an odd life.
What a great movie that would make, actually.
Yeah. Don't whatever you're doing, kids, don't get your drugs from somebody in the horn section. It's funny though. I have a little bit of I don't know if I talked about this in the pod or not. I have a little bit of eczema because I'm a person. Apparently, we all get it at some point.
Yeah.
And
not protected.
The stuff they gave me is on the Major League Baseball banned list.
Really?
It's the cream of the cream and the clear fame.
Really?
Yes. Although apparently Victor added a few things too.
Oh, he
but
did.
the base ingredient would get me. I would be testing positive. And I'm just ripped now, though. That's the thing.
Right. Your head is like way too big for your headphones.
Bigger hats, bigger shoes. But yeah. What his struggles remind me of is Andre Dawson in the 1989 NLCS. So Andre had an excuse. Andre's knees had both seized up.
Bone rubbing against bone.
He literally couldn't move. But Andre kept coming up in big spots. And you're like, okay, this is only just one. He just needs one. And he never got one. To the point where the 16-year-old me was like, just play Lloyd McClendon.
Right. Curtis Wilkerson couldn't be worse.
Yeah. Lloyd had a good year. Play him in right one game. Let's try it. No, we're not going to try that. But at least the New York fans and media will be very understanding to Aaron if he doesn't turn this around.
They get pretty. I mean, they do everything big in New York, including feeling despondent. They're very. They wear it on their sleeves.
Yeah. I mean, they probably should have won game one. That would have changed things quite a bit. Can't get swept if you win game one. And then the other game, the other two games have been 4-2. They've been close. It's just for absence of, my country for a big hit.
Yeah.
Or a base runner.
Close-ish. Yesterday, I mean, we complained about Judge swinging and missing, which he does. But I saw, this is John Boy, so I take it with, I'm assuming it's true. The Yankees watched 24 four-seam fastballs go by for called strikes tonight. That's the most by them in any single game this season. It's the second most by any team this season. The Nats had 27 on May 4th. So Judge is unable to make good contact, but the other Yankees aren't even swinging.
Yeah. Well, we've seen in the last two series, we've seen the resuscitation of Walker Buehler. And Eno Saris had an interesting point about Walker's start against the Mets was the best, whatever they used to measure stuff.
Right.
It was the best stuff that he had all year, pre-Tommy John surgery. But Eno wondered how much of it had to do with the fact that it was cold, because apparently pitcher stuff plays up when it's cold, and the wind was blowing at him. And apparently that also helps stuff. And so he's like, it could just be he got perfect weather. Well, the conditions weren't as similar last night in Yankee Stadium, and he pitched well again. So it could just be that he's a good pitcher who's finally getting healthy.
Yeah. And it just takes, when you have the Tommy John, you're not out of the box but what you were before or what you could be later. So it's just a matter of repetition and time and,
And then obviously the managerial move that will be dissected forever is when in the 10th, when Joe Madden brought John Lackey in to pitch to Justin Turner. No, wait, it was almost like that. It was when Aaron Boone brought Nestor Cortez in. They intentionally walked Mookie? Who'd they walk? Yeah. To get to Freddie Freeman,
right?
Who had not hit the ball hard in the entire playoffs. Even he'd had a triple earlier in the game, but it was a slap hit down the line with and it had me wondering. Now Freddie made it look dumb, but I was wondering why both physically limited first basemen, Anthony Rizzo and Freddie Freeman, both teams were still playing these extreme shifts. And I was like, they're both just slapping the ball, trying to get it. I think you probably should just play them straight up now. They're not the same hitter. And then Freddie just homers every day. So that's the end of it. I guess but the shift still doesn't work because you'd have to put somebody in the right field seats.
Not in the rule book. You can't do that.
No. Well, they tried, the Dodgers tried a guy in the left field stands. And that didn't work either. Actually, it did. It ended up being a double.
It did, but I think that would have been a double anyway.
It was. Yeah, he just got to keep the ball. I wonder if he got kicked out. Usually we get we get to watch.
I saw, if you go back and watch the video of the game, you can see him gathering his things And it's almost like, yeah, I know what's coming. Let me just get his stuff. And we don't see him escorted, but I do wonder. It didn't, like I said, it would have been a double anyway, so it wasn't consequential. I wonder if they like let him go at some point in the stadium because it's
right.
Those,
make a show of walking him out and get him into the concourse and go, all right, just don't go back to your seat. Just watch it somewhere else. It's kind of like the Steve Bartman where they just hide. Would you just hide?
Right.
Wait till Jay Mariotti gets your name and prints it in the paper tomorrow, and then that'll be the end of everything for you there, buddy. So he brings Nestor in, who hadn't pitched since, I don't know, spring training. Maybe not quite that bad.
5.5 weeks. 5 or 5.5 weeks.
And the question was, he had the great Tim Hill, the oldest 30-year-old in the world. His actual lefty specialist, why didn't he go to him? And they were up a run, right?
Yes.
They were protecting the lead to get him out, they win. And I saw somebody try to explain it. Oh, I know who it was. It was our old friend Boog Shambi. He got asked this by Rich Eisen. And who was it? Who bats after Freddie? Teoscar? I lose myself in their line. And it was a right-handed batter next.
Yeah.
And that was the thought, was that if Freddie gets on, now you've got a lefty against a righty in a tied game, and he'd rather have Nestor than Tim Hill pitching to the righty. But that to me seems like, don't you just send the guy out to get the guy out to win the game and not worry about, that seems like after the fact, when you're trying to come up with a reason why you did it.
Right.
Yeah. That didn't work.
Well, it didn't. Hill has been good. I don't know that he's a funky left-hander. I don't know that I would. I was kind of thinking, I think the Dodgers are going to win here no matter what they do.
Yeah.
I think there's that part of it. I don't think necessarily dropping Nestor in behind enemy lines 5 weeks after he had pitched was a great call. Maybe some lower leverage to ease into a little bit, but he picked the worst thing. He could have also stayed with Cousins, but
yeah. Well, he could have either stayed with Cousins, a former White Sox, although he's just a spring training White Sox. It doesn't really count. He still had the stench of the 2024 Sox on him. Or Tim Hill, a former White Sox, or Nestor, who had probably a future White Sox. And he went with maybe next year. And he went with the guy who he didn't want the taint of the Sox. So he said, I want a Yankee. We're going to blow this game. I want a Yankee to blow it.
Right.
And
that's Yankee.
What he got. So good job, Aaron.
Well, Nestor came in last night and got a couple outs.
Yeah.
So, including the Baharnist Shohei. So, I believe.
And it is hard, if you activate a guy for the first time in forever in the World Series, it's hard to find a soft landing for him. It's the World Series.
Yeah.
If you're going to use him, it's probably going to be in a big spot because there tend to be lots of big spots. Yeah, so let's talk about the wisdom of playing your $700 million player with a harness holding his shoulder to his body. Not just is he going to make it worse, just how effective do you really expect him to be? Now, he did get on base twice, both times by not swinging. He walked and he got hit in the toe. But it didn't look great.
His grounder yesterday was over 100 miles an hour. So now I don't know is it impossible for him to hit with velocity in the air? Possibly with the contraption. But he did hit the ball hard. So I would still say it's not conclusive evidence that he should be playing, but it just doesn't, he seems to wince a lot. And I have a feeling some kind of surgery additional is coming, but we'll see.
Well, the Twitter doctors, some of them actual doctors who just show up on Twitter, they say, given the description of his injury, there's no way he didn't tear his labrum. He's going to need labrum repair, which on his non-pitching shoulder is not, you don't want to have to do it, but it's not that big of a deal. It'll be, he'll be ready. But they did say, well, he might be ready for the start of spring training.
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh God, we're already doing this with Shohei again.
Right.
For me, now I think I'm very upset with the Dodgers. I think they need to take into account the most important people in this whole thing, and that is anyone who owns him in fantasy in a keeper league. Who has him, like me, who has him twice. I have him as a pitcher and as a hitter, separate. I have two Shoheis. It's like having twins. It's like having Lindsay Lohan, except Shohei doesn't, drive into telephone poles. What do you think of me, right? Like I stashed him as a pitcher on the bench my entire year. I got nothing out of him because I'm just holding him for next year. And now you're just recklessly throwing him out there just to win a World Series. Can't we think of the truly important things in life?
And they don't appear to even really need him to do that, as it turns out.
No, they don't. In fact, it's a pretty easy fix, right? You can get your hobbled first baseman and let him DH. And then Max Muncy goes over and plays first, and little Kiké gets to play third. And then you got Shohei if you need him to pinch hit.
Right.
That's more of a Kirk Gibson thing. He could do they could bookend Kirk Gibson moments in the World Series. They get Freddie in the first game, and then Shohei can come off the bench in game 4.
Seem to be piling up the Kirk Gibson if they need it. Homages.
Yeah. We got Joe Davis slightly reenacting the Vin Scully. Though if that was Vin's home run call, was "She is gone," but he tried to say it, I think, like him, and then he went. What was it? Freddie meet Gibby or something?
Yeah.
It's like, maybe just stop after the "she is gone" part. But and then they had I guess Verducci had the scoop that Gibson heard the call, not Joe Davis though, because he was listening to it on the radio on his phone on a hunting trip.
Okay.
So I don't know who he got. Whoever Steven Nelson, I think, is their Charlie Steiner fill-in this year. Charlie's been out
sounds
with.
Right.
Charlie has apparently beaten cancer, and he will be back next year, but he missed most of the season. He was only back for a few games in the middle of the year, and then he was gone again. Game 1 was a great game. It's like, oh my God, we're going to get, a series chock full of these. And maybe we still will. I mean, it's happened, never. It's happened once ever where a team down 3-0 has won. Nobody's ever done the World Series. The Yankees are intimately familiar with that someone can blow a 3-0 lead.
I've noted a lot of Red Sox fans, as a public service pointing out, hey, if you guys need some tips on how to overcome a 3-0 deficit, I have this video for you. And it's that series from 2004. Nice. So
and they could just go over. I mean, Dave Roberts is sitting in the other dugout. Big Poppy is there. A-Rod is there. A-Rod and Jeter can give you advice too, what not to do. It's just full of that.
Right.
I see Jeter threw out the first pitch before Game 3, and of course he famously is the one who told George W. Bush, "If you bounce it, they'll boo you."
Yes.
So I guarantee you somebody said that to him in the dugout before he popped out. He made a nice throw. I was surprised he didn't have. I thought he would do the jump throw.
Yeah,
but he didn't. He could get it all the way to home plate with just a normal throw.
Well, we couldn't get Jeremy Giambi to reenact the whole thing, so he was not available.
Talk about Lindsay Lohan.
That might have been in poor taste.
Mine. That's what people don't tune into this for good taste.
It's a podcast. It's not PBS.
Yes, we'd have to talk like this. David, what do you think about? So, I noticed they were showing all of the Dodger Yankee World Series results previously. Fair amount of sweeps, a lot of 4-2s in there. But there was comfort for the Yankees. It had happened a couple of times where a team had lost the first 2 on the road and then won the next 4. In fact, the last time these two teams faced in 1981, that's what happened. Didn't happen last time. Did you hear the interesting tidbit about who flew the Yankees charter plane from Los Angeles to New York?
It wasn't Sully, was it?
It was. That's what they landed on the Hudson, and they all yelled at him and said, there weren't any birds this time, Sully. Stop showing off. It was the Game 3 starting pitcher's dad.
Really?
Clark Schmidt's dad flew the plane. He's not even a pilot. He just he stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. No, I saw that on the Twitters that he is a pilot, and apparently he's done it before, and he did it. It was not good luck though.
No,
that's too bad. They won't let him. If they go back to L.A., he's not flying the plane again.
Nestor
can fly. That's right. If you haven't flown a plane in 5.5 weeks, you'll be fine. Uh-oh.
These things fly themselves.
Pull up. Oh, shit. Oh shoot! I was looking for here. The Dodgers have a pitcher who's not on the. I don't believe he's on the World Series roster. Whose last name is Enriquez.
Yes,
and of course,
I'm not too familiar with him, but
of course, Kiké Hernandez's name is Enrique. So do you think they call that guy Kikes?
That's a good Dave Brown question. Yeah. If I can use myself in the first person.
The only reason it came up was on another podcast I was listening to. They were talking about, this was pre-World Series, and they were talking about, and they kept saying Enriquez, and I'm like, what are the Kiké does not fit this part of the. I realized they weren't saying Enrique, they were saying Enriquez,
right?
Because first I thought it was funny that whoever it was calling Kiké by his real name, because you never I don't even think I knew Kiké's real name for a long time.
There is, and I've got to tread carefully here. There is a movement among certain fans, journalists, to refer to him only as Enrique. Because if you don't properly accent Kiké, you've got a big problem on your hands when you type that out.
Yeah. I used to joke that Ron Santo would have had a lot of problems with Kiké Hernandez. Yeah, the Anti-Defamation League would have been setting up shop outside the booth.
But there's some thoughtful fans out there. It sounds almost pretentious to call him Enrique.
Yeah, it does, because especially since that's what he seems to go by, right?
Right.
It's almost like you're what's the word when you intentionally mispronounce someone.
Yeah,
which is an awful thing to do.
It's not.
This is like,
is it?
Right,
it's something like that.
It's like you're basically telling Kiké, no, you're the nickname you go by could be offensive, so I'm not going to call you that. And he's
but only if you.
That's what I call myself.
Only if you botch.
Yeah, you have to get it wrong. But you're saying it has to do with in print. If you don't put the accent over the E.
Yes.
Yeah.
You come up with a slur that's not good. You don't want.
Yeah.
Now.
But doesn't context have to matter? Like if you saw it in the article about the Dodgers World Series game and somebody missed the accent, wouldn't you read it as Kiké?
When I don't know when his career started. Like I don't know if it coincided with Twitter or whatever. I would see Kiké without an accent. Like the first time I saw it, and it stopped me. It's like, whoa.
2014.
That's a word we're not supposed to see. So, not for years would it bother me, but at first, it did actually bother me.
I never knew him as anything but Kiké.
Yeah,
and I'm sure I heard it before I read it. So then, to me, I always read it as the way I'd heard it.
Right.
But being a smartass, I went, ooh, well, somebody's going to say that wrong and get in big trouble.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
No, that's a long way to go from my terrible pun, Kiké's joke.
It's not that terrible. I thought of the same. I saw that guy's name and I'm like, that reminds me of Kiké Hernandez somehow.
And they're teammates, which is nice.
It's a funny line. I'll ask that someday.
Yeah.
Is he Kiké's?
It would be wouldn't that be a clever nickname for a teammate to give him?
Sort of a clever, dumb nickname, but yes.
Yeah. Well, those are the best kind of the dumb ones.
Also, to put a cap on this, I guess, I sort of feel like in Office Space, the Michael Bolton character. It's like, Kiké didn't get that name. His nickname doesn't have anything to do with Jewish slur.
No.
It's like the Jewish slur should change because that's the one that sucks. Kiké's fine.
That's right. But, with this World Series matchup of superstars, Shohei and Aaron Judge, they've combined for 2 hits.
Judge also with an invisible harness around him.
Yes. Holding his arms down while he's trying to swing. I'd seen the Yankees off and on over the course of the year and watching them in the playoffs. And I still am befuddled by their choice of outfield alignment. Like why they had all year to just go find a center fielder, didn't they? Like Alex Verdugo is no special anything. In fact, they went back and forth whether him or Jason, if you put 2 S's in, I'm going to call it Jason Dominguez, or him should play left. Aaron Judge is not a center fielder. And Juan Soto is not a right fielder. There are
Gold Glover.
Aaron Judge.
Gold Glove in right field, sir.
God. Yeah, him and Glaber hooked up for one of the most important plays in the series when they couldn't make a routine throw from the outfield to second base. No shock there that they're both very defensive runs saved challenged, and so is Judge. The ironic thing is Judge is a good right fielder. Soto is a perfectly passable left fielder. And they're not getting much out of Verdugo anyway. Why didn't they actually go find a center fielder? It's almost like they're like, oh, no, it's cool that the 6'9", 270-pound captain is our center fielder.
Right.
So, yeah, he'd be just as cool and right, and he'd probably help your pitching staff out.
And it does seem like it is, I think he gets the job done, but it is certainly not ideal for lots of health reasons to have Judge in center field. It's a easier way for him to get hurt, which you can't afford, or maybe it doesn't matter. But during the regular season, it would have mattered. And it is, yes. I mean, Trent Grisham is not to your liking. Is that they traded for him in spring training? It seemed redundant. Yeah. And another left-handed hitting outfielder, huh? And then he doesn't play anyway.
I mean, Mike Tauchman was right there for the taking.
Yeah.
A great former Yankee. They could have brought him back.
Right.
He'd be winning this World Series with the Palatine plotter in center.
Well, I think you might get your wish if Soto goes back to the Nationals in free agency or somewhere else, the Mets. Move Judge right over to right, and then I don't know who plays center, but they have a whole off season to figure it out.
Yeah. They our good buddy John Heyman had news over the weekend in his New York Post column about how because the Dodgers are not only are they saving so much money because so much of Shohei's $700 million is deferred, but they're also raking in a huge amount of money from not one, but two different Asian airlines who want to sponsor the team because of Shohei and Yamamoto, that the Dodgers might just go sign Juan Soto.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make everyone happy?
My first thought was that was just trolling. Like they were doing that for this series as something else to distract the Yankees or whatever. But I mean, it would make sense for the Dodgers to sign anybody.
I don't think he'd play right for the Dodgers.
Probably not.
I think Mookie would probably get to
He's probably
still play
safe
right
out
field.
there, yes.
Yeah. Mookie's like, I won real Gold Gloves out here.
Right.
And you have an Ian Happ one. You go stand in that. Go stand over there. You can start winning Ian Happ's Gold Gloves and left. Go get them. Thank God the Cubs don't need anybody like that, though. But we talked about it before. I mean, if you go, it'd be great. You spend a lot of money on Juan Soto, and then, he's just Ian Happ's backup. Seems like a waste of money. Comes to the park. Does Ian need a day off? No? Well, shit. All right, fine. I'll just sit here with my $600 million and do nothing. But yeah, you would have thought this was supposed to be like Shohei and Judge and lighten it up, but instead, not so much. Not that the Dodgers are struggling on offense. Tommy Edman, his OPS for the World Series is 1.235, of course. Freddie Freeman's is a little higher, 1.635. Teoscar's 917, Kiké 800. That's really about it, but that's enough. We got 4 guys who are all really hidden. Mookie hasn't done much. Shohei has done nothing except for... I want to ask you about his slide, because it just looked weird. But Joe Davis said last night he always slides like that. What's with the left arm hanging down like a rudder? Is he trying to steer himself to the base?
I saw somebody say that would be a good slide for like home, but not for a base.
Yeah.
So, where you have to stick yourself on it. It just seems like, yeah, he does some odd base running things. He almost lacks a fundamental there. I don't know. He's done that, maybe not that slide before that I've noticed, but he does some odd things on the bases, takes some chances, does some, awkward things. He is like a big, tall dude. So yeah. I don't know. He's
6'4". They have listed at 210. There's no way he's 210.
No,
he's
that's a lie.
He's a big man. And I didn't notice. I mean, I knew he was big when he was with the Angels, but I realized just how little I actually watched him when I started watching him with the Dodgers. Like, God, he's freaking enormous.
Yeah, he is.
But he apparently what he does is he tucks his right arm in, almost like he's going to give the old who gave the forearm shiver to it was
Volpe?
Michael the third baseman for the Royals gave it to Volpe.
Garcia.
Yeah. Almost like he does that. He does that basically to protect his pitching arm. And then I guess to balance himself, he like hangs out with but it's like you're just begging for something to have that left arm just like straight down like that. And he did.
Well, that'll learn him.
Yeah. Maybe he just likes, how about this? Maybe he has a painkiller addiction.
Right. We thought that was Ipe too, but it was really Shohei.
He's like, all right, I'm gonna need a surgery. So let's go left arm. That won't be that big a deal. The Brett Favre of Japanese baseball.
Right. Well, hopefully Shohei isn't stealing from Japanese welfare recipients.
Yeah, if his daughter starts playing volleyball, you got big problems ahead for Shohei. You're going to be ripping off. Some state is going to be giving you lots of money to build an arena so she can play volleyball in it. It was fun to see Mark Leiter Jr. pitching in the World Series. One of my all-time favorite Cubs. Can never understand how he ever got anybody out, but he hasn't given up a run yet. He didn't pitch great last night, but he escaped unscathed. I didn't even know he wasn't on the roster originally. He replaced someone who got injured. And so whenever the first game, he pitched in game 2, I'm sitting at home like, oh God, this horrible flashback. Here comes Mark Leiter Jr. Oh, you better bring him into faith. Now I think he might not have even been in the bullpen for game 1. That's the guy. That's who you bring in a pitch to the lefty with a righty. It's Mark Leiter Jr. He's basically a lefty specialist right-hander.
Right.
Oh, he could have been the World Series hero.
Right. If only they thought of that.
That's terrible. That's just bad roster construction.
Well, the Yankees are, for all the imperfections on the Dodgers roster, most of them are caused by injuries.
Yeah.
The Yankees are legitimately, let me see, Dodgers, Padres, Mets probably, and Phillies, even though the Phillies weren't playing. The Dodgers or the Yankees are no better than the fifth best team.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, from a Cub perspective, that's really the problem, right? It's that they're just in the wrong league. If they would move to the American League, they might be the second best team. But in the National League, they're the ninth or whatever.
Could they do a Brewers? Could they pull a switch?
They could. Maybe just trade with the White Sox.
Sure.
Jerry seems up for anything these days. Why not?
He might be.
Yeah. Completely. I forgot exactly. I had a great point I was going to make, and I completely forgot it.
Those are the best kind.
Oh, and I was going to say, yeah, the Dodgers really they built their roster with just one big hole in it, and there has not seemed to bother them. Although I think they filled it, and they just didn't bother to get a shortstop.
Yeah.
And now I think they think going forward it's Tommy Edman, and maybe it is. Do you enjoy the fact that? And at first I thought I was just hearing it, and then I started actively listening for it. John Smoltz calls him Edmonds at least half the time, and sometimes within the same, like he'll start a sentence with his name and somehow use his name again, and it'll be different.
I've tuned it out, honestly, so I would have to go back and I totally believe you, though.
Yeah, I think he does think that it's Jim Edmonds' kid. Oh, I pitched against his dad. No, he didn't, John. No.
Why prepare when you're John Smoltz? You know it all anyway. So
yeah, were you the one that pointed out that last night he said, "Well, I've been in all these situations."
Yes, he did. I took it a little out of context, but he did say that. Yes. Somebody thinks he made that Fox told him to stop being, and I laughed when I read this, stop being analytical and try to be more predictive. And I was like, I don't remember the analytical John Smoltz. No.
I do think his style has changed. I just feel like as he gets older, he just watches less baseball. And he's farther removed from when he played.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just kind of like just winging it now.
Yeah. Definitely going on, not momentum, the other thing. What's not momentum, but the inertia?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, he's still rolling. He's an object in motion. He's just going to stay in motion until he runs into a wall, and then that'll be the end of it. But, for everybody's like, I think that'll get rid of him. You just know we'd end up with AJ. And I just can't. I can't take that. I just can't. I'd much rather make fun of Smoltz than have to suffer through AJ Przinsky. Although the good thing is the Cubs are never going back to the playoffs, so I don't really have to actively watch as much.
Right. I
guess that's fine.
You can remove yourself from the equation here as much as you like because of that.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at watching games without listening to him.
Adam Wainwright, though, would be more. He's a little happier than AJ. I don't know if that's the guy that they would go to, but he's sort of the anti-Smoltz. He you can tell that he sort of likes baseball a little. So
yeah, Fox clearly really likes him. I'm not a huge fan of his either, just because of him.
Because.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is nice to see Yadier Molina though, managing now. I didn't know what league he's in.
The Dominican Winter League.
Yeah.
Le Dome. Across from Alberto Pujols, also a manager.
Yeah.
I of course love to make fun of his him being a basketball, kind of the Puerto Rican Jerry Reinsdorf of basketball owners. But they had a bad year. His the Vaqueros. The Bayamon Vaqueros, they were like 9-24.
Oh no!
And not like the championship of 2022 at all. So I wonder if that just soured him on the whole basketball experience. He's like, I got to get back to my roots.
Yeah.
I think it's good. It's a serious move. He obviously. I wonder if he's, is this practice for the Cardinals? Seriously, being their next manager. It's different for a guy it's Spanish is the common language, but Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic are not to be obvious. That's not the same country, and it's he's showing a definite commitment to learning how to be a manager.
Yeah, and that's why I asked what league, because I went to say the Dominican League. I'm like, wait, and I caught myself because I'm like, wait a minute, did he actually do that? Did he leave Puerto Rico to go to the Dominican? And yes, he did. So I agree with that. I do think it's inevitable that he's going to be a big league manager.
Mm-hmm.
He'll probably be pretty good at it. It's funny though that if you're Oliver Marmol, you have two guys circling your job.
Right.
Skip Schumacher and Yadi Molina are both just like, you're like one pitching change away from coming back to the dugout, and one of them is standing there going, Mo wants to see it before he retires.
Well, and Chaim Bloom is also in the wings, and he didn't hire you either. Nope. So, yeah.
No, I would, even with the extent, they gave him an extension last year, but that felt like one of those, we've taken care of you now.
Right.
So when you're fired, you've got a pretty nice bank. This. Yeah. And if they don't make the playoffs next year, there's no way he's gone. I mean, that's it.
I think there's a pretty good chance.
That they're not gone. They're not very good, which I enjoy. But I would think this is probably it for Ollie. And then it's just a matter of which former Cardinal. I don't like Skip's odds if Yadi wants that job.
Right.
I feel like that just, even though he's obviously the proven big league manager, people seem to think he was pretty good at it.
Yeah.
He's not Yadi Molina. The White Sox managerial search it's the cream of the crop there. Phil Nevin appears to be one of the front runners. And as Praz pointed out, the happiest guy should be a Sox radio announcer, Len Casper.
Yeah.
So this is a long time ago. How many years ago was this now? This was probably 2008, 2009. My wife's family was in Phoenix, and we went out there, and it was during spring training. And so we went to dinner with Len.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun, but my wife doesn't really know much about baseball. And she, Len was trying to keep her, involved in the conversation, and she was happy to do that. So she just decided she'd ask him a baseball question. And it was, is there any player you've covered that you just hate? And Len looks at me and goes, you can't write this. And I said, okay. And I didn't for like 10 years. His answer was Phil Nevin. So that would be great if Phil gets to be the manager. I had a serious question about this. If you're interested in Phil Nevin, number one, I mean, why? But number two, Dale's fame is right there. He's like, I mean, if you want a grumpy manager, Dale would be he's much easier to work with. His players, until he threatened to send his only two good players to AAA when he was going to demote Anthony Rizzo and Starlin Castro, his players actually liked him and were playing pretty hard for him. They're just awful by design.
Yeah.
How come Phil would get a second shot and not Dale? Actually, Dale managed the Brewers in the playoffs in 2008.
What?
Ned Yost got fired with like 4 days to go.
Yeah, with 10 days left of the season. Yeah, that and it's like it's Nevin, or apparently, I don't know, or Will Venable, who's seen as like one of the up and coming dudes who hasn't been a manager yet. Yeah. It's like, if you get him, you got a good manager for tomorrow. He's turned down a bunch of other offers, and it's very polar opposite types here. Caretaker versus. I expect the White Sox to do the wrong thing, whatever it is. So,
it's a former Cub player and a former Cub coach. Will Venable was on one of Joe's staffs.
That's right.
The Sox just can't get away from it. They just have to keep hiring.
Yes.
Why not just call Rick Renneria again?
Somebody made that joke.
He'd probably be a pretty good manager for this team.
What is he doing?
I don't know. Real estate? He made pretty good money from the two Chicago teams that both screwed him over.
That's just unfortunate.
Now, they haven't updated this because it said, what is Rick Renneria doing now? Rick Renneria is the current manager of the Chicago White Sox. Maybe he's been rehired, and athletespeakers.com, that's what came up. They're the only ones who know so far.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's the move. Just go back to Rick. Let him rebuild it again. Or this. How about this? I've got the map. You go with Dale's Fame for a couple of years. Then Rick. Then Joe Madden. And you won the World Series.
Right.
Seems pretty simple. There is a new, I guess it's a docu-series on Amazon Prime Video called Game 7.
Yeah.
And it's a 5-episode thing, and they do famous Game 7s. And I watched the one, because I was, of course, interested in it, on the 2016 World Series Game 7.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty good. It's nothing... That story has been told a million times, especially to those of us in Chicago. We feel like we know everything, and pretty much nothing new came in. They interviewed, let's see, Anthony Rizzo, Dexter Fowler, Theo.
Did they do Madden?
They did not do Joe, although Joe got talked about a lot. And it's funny, the guy who went off on what a terrible job Joe did in that game was Joe Buck. He basically said that they sat down with him before the game, and Joe walked him through what he was going to do, and then he didn't do any of it. He did it all. He just did it all in fast forward. It's pretty good. But I'm a sucker for that ending. So sure. I enjoy that. They Aroldis got credit for pitching the 9th inning and getting through it before the rain delay. He gave up the homer in the 8th.
Right.
And was despondent. In fact, Joe had to go ask him, can you pitch? Because, when your pitcher is weeping in the dugout, you're a little worried about sending him back out to get 3 more outs.
Yeah.
And he did. And Dave Ross is a huge part. They talk to Rossi a lot. And Rossi's actually very funny in it. It's easy to laugh at it now. It wouldn't have been. He talks about how he comes into the game, and he didn't say it, but you see some video that we've seen before. So the plan obviously was Kyle to go like 5 innings, then John Lester to maybe go 3, and then Aroldis. And the Kyle part of it, Joe gets a bunch of shit for taking Kyle out too early, and I get it. But there were a couple of things. In the second inning, Kyle was getting hit really hard. The Indians scored 1 run, but the Cubs were lucky they didn't score 3 or 4. There was a long drive to center. It looked like it was going to be a home run that Dexter caught, and the last out was a shot to Bryant that almost carried him all the way into left field when he caught it. And then he settled down, but then in the 4th, I guess it must have still been the 3rd. He got screwed on a pitch to Carlos Santana and ended up walking him. And that got everything in motion. Lester got up, and once John got up, you had to either use him or, and so that I think Joe's plan was probably Kyle certainly would have finished the 4th. Is that when he left? That's how I'm all confused. But anyway, they show Ross went down to the bullpen to catch Lester. Seems odd, but he did. Like he's the one of your active players is in the dugout or is in the bullpen catching one of your pitchers. And he knew that when John came in, he came in. Right. So he's lobbying really hard to Joe that John needs to come in as soon as possible because he's hot and he's really good. And he ended up being really good. But then Ross talks about how he comes in, and then the first thing that happens is Kipnis hits the ball like 4 feet, and Ross throws it into the stands. And then a pitch bounces in front of him, hits him in the mask, and his cleat sticks in the ground, and he falls down, and 2 runs scored. And he goes, "I've been in the game for 5 minutes, and I've already screwed it all up." Like, yes, you have. But I've talked about this before. A very unheralded moment in the game came when Ross, he hit the home run against Andrew Miller. But the most important thing he did in the game was it was in the top of the ninth. He walked, and they pinch ran for him. They pinch ran Chris Coughlin for him, and that put Miguel Montero in the game to catch the bottom of the ninth. And because I probably have said this to you before, and I've said it a lot, Ross caught Aroldis in the ninth inning of the comeback game against the Giants. And then he caught him again, obviously, in the eighth inning of that Indians game. He didn't call anything but a fastball every single pitch. Aroldis is just pumping heaters over and over again. And guys are starting to get looks at Aroldis' fastball over and over and over again. And Montero went almost all sliders with Aroldis to get him through the ninth. And the Indians were out in front of everything. They were thinking he's only going to throw me a fastball. In fact, Rajai Davis, he's one of the guys they talked to with the Indians. There is one really interesting thing, and I didn't believe it till they showed it. But anyway, so we'll get to that in a second. Rajai was talking about how he knew he was only going to get he'd seen enough pitches. He knew he was only going to get a fastball. He was just hoping Aroldis would get one down where he could actually just, because he couldn't catch up to it but he could drop his bat on it down. He was surprised he hit a home run, but he was not surprised he hit the ball hard. And then Montero comes in the ninth and mixes it up. Otherwise, I think the Cubs probably lose the World Series in the bottom of the ninth. It was Lindor, Kipnis, and Santana that he had to get through, and he got them all out. And then they show the foul ball. The Kipnis hits it. Every Cub fan freaked out about. Like, they thought it was a home run. It didn't go 200 feet. I've never understood the panic. So here's the story Rajai tells that I didn't believe. It's on Ross's home run. He goes back on it, and he said he could tell that it was either going to be at the wall or barely over. And he talked about how when he was with the Blue Jays, he had jumped up and dug his spikes into the wall to hoist himself up and rob a home run. And he immediately thought of that as he was running back. Basically, I can climb the wall. I'm going to catch this. And he said that because it was the World Series, he'd gotten fancy new shoes. And they had a plastic spike in the front, not a metal one. And his foot slipped down the wall as he tried to get it. And he barely missed it. And I'm like, that's bullshit. They show the replay, and you can see his foot. He tries to jam his foot into the padding, and it slips straight down. And then the ball goes just over the tip of his glove for a home run.
Wow.
Yeah. That's I probably gave it away, but now you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. But if you want to see it, it is you don't believe it when he explains it. And then as soon as they show the replay, like, holy shit, he's right. He almost caught that.
What, Netflix did you say?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime?
Yep.
Game 7.
Game 7. There's the Rangers Game 7 is on there. The New York Rangers Game 7 is on there. I feel like there's 2 baseball games. And it's 5 different games. It's produced by Bill Simmons' old 30 for 30 buddy Connor Shell. They put them all together, which I'm amazed he was able to, or maybe it is on there. I should look. I wonder if the Red Sox Game 7 is on there, because although that one's anticlimactic, because they just beat the shit out of the Yankees in that game.
They did.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Royals beating up the Cardinals in Game 7 after the Denkinger game.
Yeah.
The game before in 85.
Yeah. Where he had the guts. Where Don Denkinger had the guts to make the right call. I don't know why Cardinal fans are so mad. But they do act like it was the last out of the game, and it wasn't. A bunch of shit had to happen afterwards.
Yes.
Which probably, to be fair to them, probably doesn't happen. If that guy was it George Orta? Was that who was safe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So chances are if that doesn't happen, they win. But that's too bad. That's what you get. Then years later, Cardinal fans are still buying customized Cardinal jerseys with Bartman 03 on them.
Yeah.
That's great. Tell us again about how wonderful your franchise is, that what you really celebrate is the Cubs' misfortune, not your own. I don't remember what I was doing something over the weekend, and somebody was talking about the Phillies, Maybe it was when Kyle Schwarber was making the picks on game day on Saturday.
Yeah.
So the game was when they did the Indiana-Nebraska game. Is that right? No. What was it this time? Indiana beat somebody. Oh, Indiana Washington. And Kyle got to make the picks. And Kyle wore, it was quite a choice. He wore an Indiana football jersey, number 10. He wore the basketball warm-up pants, those candy striped pants. And then he wore a batting helmet from the Indiana baseball team gave him a batting helmet. And that's what he's wearing as he's making the picks. It's like, that's something, Kyle. But for some reason I got to thinking about, I like to think during this White Sox, they're awful, the worst season in baseball history. I was telling people, I think they deserve it because they're one of the worst franchises in baseball history. Like they're just they've not been a consistently successful franchise. And they somehow comforted themselves forever that the Cubs were worse when they weren't. The Cubs had far more success than the White Sox. White Sox have won 6 pennants ever. The Cubs, I believe, have won 17. I think is that it. But I got thinking about the Phillies because I think when we grew up, the Phillies were good. You know, that was like the Mike Schmidt. You know, like the not so much the Pete Rose, although they pitched. They had all those old farts that made the World Series, right? With Joe Morgan and Pete Rose and
Luzinski in the 70s,
but they
Steve
are
Carlson.
The Phillies are historically a terrible baseball franchise. They have the most losses by a lot in baseball history. Cubs 17 pennants. The White Sox 6.
When they won the World Series in 1980, that was their first World Series.
Yeah.
And this is a team that was from the 19th century. Well, they didn't have the World Series then, Dave, but they weren't. So I guess that doesn't matter. But not good.
Yeah, the Phillies have won. The Phillies have been around since 1883.
Yeah.
It took them 97 years to win their first World Series, and they've only won one since.
Right.
They've won 8 pennants in 142 years. And they went a long time between. They won 2 pennants in their first. Well, from 1883 to 1975, they won 2 pennants. Actually, no, all the way till 1980 because they kept losing in they became a perennial playoff team in the mid 70s. They went to the NL. They went to the playoffs 6 times in 9 years from the 77 season to 83. And then they were pretty bad again. They had the one, they had the crazy 93 bunch.
Yeah.
Then they got good and sustained it. They went to back-to-back World Series with Charlie Manuel and Chase Utley and those guys. But they've been awful for just a tremendously long time. And it's just funny how, at least for me, I just didn't realize that. Because when I became aware of baseball, the Phillies are good.
Right.
But I didn't realize they had been embarrassingly awful forever.
Yeah, our opinions are if you're 8 or 9, and that's when you start to like baseball, your opinion is formed a lot by whatever the current situation is. Yeah. You're ignorant of history, context.
Yeah, the White Sox famously had never gone. They had never gone to the postseason in back-to-back years until 20 and 21.
21, yeah.
Yeah, and one of them, the COVID year. I mean, hell, the Cubs went to the playoffs in the COVID year. You didn't have to be good.
Yeah, you could be 500 or less.
So I don't know where I was going with that, other than the fact that I decided to go look it up because I'm thinking in my head, like, had the Phillies had to gone like, it was when they were talking about, I know what it was now. It wasn't that. It was during the, Tom Morello is in the Game 7 video way too much. Like, he's fine. He's a legitimate Cub fan. There's a funny picture of him holding a sign at the 2003 at the Bartman game. Just so as a fan, he's got literally made a sign and he's holding it up. And he's only like 20 seats away from Bartman.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how, basically obviously the 16 World Series was the longest streak against the second longest streak, 108 years and 68 years for the Indians. And he was like, now the Indians have inherited the longest one from the Cubs, and he's like, go get them, win it, it's now we just had to get through you, now we don't hate the Indians. And that got me thinking, like, the other longest streaks now are basically teams that have never won, like the Brewers and the Padres. And that somehow got me thinking about who had really long ones otherwise. And I was like, God, the Phillies must have been enormous. That's why I looked it up.
I see.
So the Phillies kind of handed that, unbeknownst to us, they handed that mantle over to the Cubs and the Red Sox, basically, when they've won in 80.
Right.
They would have been the hapless losers. And they compare in the Game 7 documentary, they compare the Indians more to the Red Sox than the Cubs, because the Indians had these great teams that had just fallen short. Like they're
in the 90s.
In the 90s, but even before that, like they had their 116 win, or whatever it was. They won 100 and they set the American League record for wins and got swept in the World Series. But yeah, like it's crazy to think back to those 90s Indians teams and that they didn't win a World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, they were the 95 season alone, where they scored, I don't even remember what it was. They played 144 games and they scored a ridiculous amount of runs.
Well, yeah. And then that's the only one that the Braves won of that group. So that was in the playoffs every year.
Yeah, the 95 Indians in 144 games scored 840 runs.
That's nuts.
That's a lot of runs.
Juice ball. And possibly juice people.
And they've been to the playoffs a ton since then. 1, 2, 3. This was their 14th playoff team since 1995.
Yeah.
So there you go. So anyway, what do we think about the remainder of this? Can the Dodgers make a series of it? There's our sports radio topic.
Can the Dodgers make a series?
Or the Dodgers? Can the Yankees make a series?
By throwing the games? Yes.
Yeah, right. Please, Dodgers, tank a couple.
Up until the last inning of Game 3, I thought there's a chance the Dodgers they're clearly the best team, but that's just this year. This is not an all-time, amazing team. It's but the Yankees don't have enough to make a series of it. I don't believe. No, not anymore.
Yeah.
Unless Aaron Judge finally gets out. It is a bullpen game, so in Game 3 or in Game 4, so there's that kind of X factor, but I don't see any more than 5 games. So no time for the offseason, pretty much.
This will be big if the if the Dodgers win, we're going to add to our list of 2016 Cubs who have won a World Series somewhere else. Jason Hayward, in absentia, will get a ring. He gave himself 2 shots because he went to the playoffs with the Astros.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Do they have anybody else?
There is somebody. Taylor Trammell played for the Yankees and Dodgers this year, so he is guaranteed.
Yeah.
A ring.
Is he going to get 2 shares? You think?
I would hope.
I don't see anybody else.
Alan Trammell not going to get a ring.
No. But that reminds me. So I on our Thursday podcast last week, I gave Tom Laxis that trivia question. It ended up being wrong. I asked him what 2016 Cubs had won World Series other places, and it had been 2.
Yeah.
Jorge Soler was the World Series MVP for the Braves, and Aroldis pitched on the Rangers last year. And that's kind of the trick. It's easy to forget that Aroldis pitched on the Rangers last year. But it turns out that I forgot one, and I'm very embarrassed that I forgot this. Another Brave on that 21 team was a former Cub, and I don't know how I forgot this. Carl Edwards Jr.
Oh, yeah.
pitched. Here was his line for the 21 Braves. He pitched in one game. He pitched a third of an inning. He gave up 3 hits, 3 runs, a homer, and a walk, and he had an ERA of 81. And he's a 2021 Atlanta Braves World Series champion.
He came back this year, I believe. Did he not?
Yeah, he came back for the Cubs, and they sent him to Iowa, and then they finally let him go, and he pitched one game. He almost did it again. He pitched one game for the Padres.
Padres, yeah.
So he could have snaked another ring. Because if their offense doesn't just completely go to sleep, I think they win the World Series.
He's had a really good career. And he's pretty close to being vested. He's got 10 years. I don't know if he needs a little bit more, or let me see, Hyde, partial Rose. He probably needs more than that.
He has 6.169 years of service time.
All right.
Well, he did. He would have added a few days to it this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he very nearly got the biggest out in Cub history. He's the guy who came out to pitch the 10th. Got the first 2 guys out, and then he somehow walked Brandon Guyer, a guy who in his career, at that point, is one of my favorite stats. At that point in Brandon Guyer's career, he had been hit by more pitches than he had walks.
Oh, that's crazy.
He had like 68 hit pitches and like 65 career walks at that time. Mm-hmm. Carl managed to walk him. And then Rajay got a hit, and then they had to go get Mike Montgomery to get the great Michael Martinez out. One of the things they didn't talk about, I don't know why it would have come up, but if the Cubs, I don't think he wasn't warming up, but if the game had gone on past the 10th, Jake Arrieta was going to come in to pitch for the Cubs.
Yeah.
On 0 days rest. So that would have been interesting. Jake Arrieta, who famously only pitched for the Cubs once. He never came back. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
He pitched for them. His last game as a Cub was the 2017 playoffs. He beat the Dodgers, the only game they won in that NLCS. And then he went to pitch for the Phillies, and then he retired. And it was all great. He never came back to pitch for the Cubs and blow a 10-run lead to the Braves, or the Brewers, whoever the fuck that was in that awful game. All right.
Okay.
Well, the next time we go to talk about this, whenever that is, it's going to be hot stove baseball.
Oh, already.
The stuff that the Cubs are best at. Rumors. Nothing actually happens. But we'll get good rumors that won't happen, and that'll get everybody excited for a while. And then they'll get really disappointed when they don't do any of it. So
I'll find a good one for you.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Many of us have herpes.
No, I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.
It's fitting. It's got to be done with one of the best games of all time. Just unbelievable. Got to congratulate the Dolan family.
Sean, my podcast co-host Andy, you were his favorite player growing up.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome.